Hi, welcome back to another episode of Cold Stream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's video, we're going to be working on the same projects, trying to move them further along. In back of me there is the Camera Lady's 32 Roadster body. I'm kind of finishing up some of the body work onto it. Had a couple of things left to do. One was the passenger side door, and then in the back of the deck lid here. I don't have the Camera Lady right now to do the video, so I'm doing the best that I can. You can see on the back of the deck lid there, I've got a little skim of body fill on that. There's kind of tiny little marks from when we put the skin on it. I mean, that's quite normal. I mean, most of my tools are nice and clean, but it's not hard to kind of get like little imperfections in. So we're going to skim that, sand it down, and then over there, I don't know, well, I can't, again, kind of without the Camera Lady here, I can't do what I would normally do. We've got that door all sanded right now. There's one little spot behind me right there. I had to put another skim on top. We'll clean that up. And then over here on the 33 chassis, the plan is for the engine, early Hemi engine, to arrive here sometime tomorrow. Along with a transmission and some pieces. The owner, I asked him if he had an old cowl and a radiator so that what we planned to do, like we did with one of the other projects for him, was position the engine in there behind the old radiator and try and get it so that we don't have to push the cowl back. So by having those old pieces in there, we should be able to do that for him again, the same way we did with the Y block on a previous episode. So that's coming in. And then further behind there is Ellie's coop, where if I have time or if I'm waiting for parts or something to dry or something like that, we'll pick away at fixing the chop up on that. So last week we got the A-pillar done and the driver's side door, we got the chop fixed on that. Now we have to come around to the other side or work our way around the back. So when I get onto that, I'll pick one of them and I'll show you what I'm doing. So follow along. So as I said, I was going to push forward and try and get all the body fill kind of cleaned up on a Camera Lady's Roadster body. I did that, basically rough sanded everything with 80, went over it with 120 in preparation for doing primer and some high build poly coating. I forget what the stuff is called. Ultimately, I'm going to put that stuff on it. But one thing I noticed, and I guess if I was building a fendered car, I would probably not be bothered by this, but across the bottom, when we put these panels on when I'm building a body, you try and simulate a spot welded look, but there's some little grind marks and everything else. Now, where we're gonna either run this car as a highboy or if we have to, we'll run with bob fenders. I think what'll happen is that some of this will be visible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a skim of body fill across here in all these areas where there's a little bit of waviness and some grind marks. There's actually a little bit of a mark here. Now, normally on a stock 32, I believe there's actually 2 rivets to go there, so that mark is not out of place. But like I said, we're either going to try and get away with a highboy or go with bob fenders. Some of these defects or some of these little ripples will be visible. We're not trying to make this thing perfect, because if you go perfect, you can get into thousands and thousands of hours cutting and buffing and everything else. We just want something nice. And I think actually in this case, I'm going to skim those and sand them flat, and I think I'll be happy with that. So anyways, we made some progress. We're inching away towards the primer, but just one more thing. Well, like I said, there was going to be a delivery today of the early Ford Hemi, a transmission, a cowl, and a radiator to start fitting the engine and transmission in the 33 chassis. So ultimately what we're going to be doing is there is another motor. We've got a dummy one right now. It's actually a pretty decent block. I think it's a 276 DeSoto Hemi. That block, what we'll do, we'll clean it up a little bit. We've got a rebuilt transmission that's not been painted. And then somewheres here is a mounting ring, a hotheads mounting ring to adapt, yeah, right there, to adapt the Chevy transmission on the early Hemi engine. So what we'll do is we'll get the cowl on. Well, actually, I'm going to clean the block up enough so there's just not dirt all over the place. We won't steam clean it or nothing like that. We'll attach it to the transmission. We'll dig through that box for the timing chain cover and water pump, so that way we can get the overall length. And then we'll start positioning the engine and transmission in the 33 chassis to see where we're going to put the engine mounts along with the radiator and cowl. Ideally, what we're hoping for is that the engine and transmission will actually fit between the original firewall and the radiator, but there's a good chance that we're going to have to modify the firewall. Now, the 33 Ford Coupe, I think the firewall is modified a little bit, but we're going to use this one to kind of ballpark everything in, and then if we have to, we'll modify the original coupe firewall so that it'll fit. But we'll move the engine and the transmission as close as we can to the radiator to get the maximum amount of clearance. So I don't know how much of that on this episode we'll get into because there's some cleaning work we've got to do, but we'll start the process anyways. So we haven't done much work on the Camera Ladies 32 Ford chassis for a while. There was a couple things I needed to do still. They weren't in a rush, but some things I had to take care of. One of them was actually getting the drive shafts. We didn't have one. I had the yoke, so I've since gone out and I've got the drive shaft made up. A couple episodes ago, I kind of described how you had to measure it. So in order to measure, I'll go through it again once more for those people that didn't see that episode. The yoke, you would push the yoke into the transmission as far as it'll go, pull it out an inch, and then you would measure from the center of this hole to the center of the rear yoke. And that's going to be the distance you're going to give to the guy that builds your drive shaft. Now, I like to get custom drive shafts made. I know some folks will get an original drive shaft, they'll cut it down and then weld it up on a lathe. And then most of the time that works and nobody ever has a problem. I've never had a problem, but one of the things I choose to do is we'll go to a drive shaft shop or a shop that makes drive shafts, and I'll get a new one made up with new components and make sure that it's balanced. And then as you watch in most of the episodes, we make sure that the driveline angle is the same angle of what the rear end is. So if we're 3 degrees here, we're 3 degrees on the rear end so that the angle on both U-joints is the same. That way you reduce the chance of any kind of vibration. The other thing we needed to do now or later was I needed to sort out where the transmission cooler was going to go. On some of my cars, we'll put the transmission cooler right in the radiator. The radiator we have for this one does have that cooler in it, but what we did on the 32 pickup, we put a separate transmission cooler in it. The Model A, actually, we're cooling it through the radiator, but I kind of like the idea of the separate transmission cooler. I decided this time we're going to use this style, and what I plan to do is mount it right there, and then run AN6 lines up to the transmission. So I bought some AN6 lines, or 3/8 I think is what it is. I've got myself some fittings, and so what I'm going to do is I will mount that on the frame where I just showed you. Then we'll make up a couple lines to pick up off of the transmission here. We bought the adapters to fit onto the transmission. It's pretty straightforward. We've made up AN6 lines here before for the fuel line. I'm just going to do exactly the same thing as I did with that, and then we'll get that off of the list of things to do. So there is a transmission cooler installed. Like I said, what I was doing, I'm going to use the AN6 braided lines. Kind of like the way that they look and don't have to really worry too much about chafing. They're flexible. I made sure that I used some sealant here on the pipe threads that went into the transmission. Same thing over on the transmission cooler. I mean, it's just above the exhaust, but there's usually enough airflow up underneath the car to cool it down. Again, it's not like we're towing or anything. Going to be running a 32 highboy, so I don't know what that weighs, 2,400 pounds maybe. So just wanted to get one in, kind of wanted to get it out of the way, not have the lines there up by the transmission, just kind of clean things up. So anyway, that's done. I made myself a list here, some more things to do for the Camera Ladies chassis. So we're going to push away on some of the small details here. But I'm probably going to go back to the other garage now and try to finish off the body fill and the body work on the Roadster body so that I can try and get that primed this week, and then ultimately push that along to paint in the upcoming future. So I did push on and sand the inner wheel wells where I said I would. Both sides now, kind of happy with it. They're not 100% perfect. There's a couple of little waves where it would kind of look like a normal spot weld or something, but for the most part, like the grind marks and everything else that were there from when I ground off the welds and stuff, that's all gone. That's nice and smooth. The back of the deck lid and then the other side were all good. So right now what I've got to do is clean this up, and I'm in the process right now of shuffling everything that way so that I can drop those curtains down. But as a result of the little early Hemi coming yesterday, needed to get that out of the way, and I figured the best thing to do to get it out of the way is basically put it together. Now, it was caked with some sort of mud like you wouldn't believe. I didn't need to clean it, to use it, but I did need to clean it up enough so that I could access where the engine mounts are going to be, because that's what we have to do. We've got to make some engine mounts for it, and a transmission mount. So there's a hotheads transmission adapter here for the GM transmission. We've got that on. I retapped all just cleaned out the threaded holes, got everything all snugged in place. The oil pan was actually, the metal was really good into it, but the bottom was just smashed in like you wouldn't believe. So spent a little bit of time just knocking most of that out. I don't know if we'll actually use that oil pan in the future, but I kind of wanted it representative of a original one. Now, fortunately, the sump is in the rear on these, so that's fantastic, because we've got that steering box in the front. So what I'm going to do right now, I am going to readjust where the chain is, and then I'm going to take the engine and transmission. I'm going to put it here in the chassis, probably with some blocks or a plate or something, just to kind of hold it in place, and then I can start, moving it around. Eventually, like I said, I'll need to put the cowl on and the radiator in to make sure that the engine is positioned forward to back the best that we can fit it. But anyways, we're moving to the next step, which is basically getting that together and getting it out of the way. Once I have it out of the way, like I said, then my plan is to drop the curtains, clean everything up, like mop the floor, and then clean the body all off, and we're going to put a coat of primer onto it, and then probably 1 or 2 coats of high build primer on top of that, and then move on to the next step. So there's the engine and transmission in for the first kind of general fitting, so to speak, to see where I think it's going to go. One point of reference here is that is the cowl feet hole. So the firewall actually will fit. So that is that hole in the front right there. So I already know that maybe the firewall is going to have to come in a little bit, because right now we're really kind of coming up close to the front. The water pump is going to stick out so far. We want to move it as close to the radiator as we can with a fan, but obviously you can't go into the radiator, so there's only so much real estate. Also, with the harmonic balancer on and the lower pulley, we might be coming up close to those shackles, so I still kind of have to fit that. But right now, the engine and transmission are at about almost the exact angle as what the pinion is in the back. The whole chassis is not fully loaded yet because these Hemis are, I mean, the heads are pretty big. The intake manifold's heavy. There's a lot of weight, so the engine is going to come down right now. So all I'm concerned about is basically matching the pinion angle with the angle of the engine. So if that's 5 and that's 5, well, right now, after everything weights down, everything should go 4 and 4, 3 and 3 as the whole body leans forward. But right now, we're ballparking it. We're getting close. Gonna get a few more parts, find a few more parts. I don't know if we have everything here or not. I think I've got to get the water pump. I think I have the pulleys. And then what I'll do is I'll put the cowl up there on the frame and then kind of just start shuffling forward and back and see where we got to go. Well, tonight's plan was to get the Camera Ladies Roadster ready to put primer on it, which I kind of did. I mean, one thing I wanted to do was clean the floor up, blow all the dust out and off of the whole thing, wipe everything down, and then basically go over it one last time. Now, one thing about blowing the dust off is that sometimes it reveals little bubbles that were kind of covered up before. So when I went over it this last time, I had a few spots. You can see the little blue tape marks where like there's ultra small blemishes or little pinholes or something that were exposed when I blew it off and wiped it down. So I went over them, put a little bit of body fill into them. Now I could probably put the primer, the high build. High build more than likely will cover most of it up. And then worst case, you put a tiny bit of putty on top of it. But what I chose to do, I just mixed up a tiny little bit of body fill and then kind of just went over those. And then tomorrow night, I will actually sand it down again. It may look like there's a lot of body fill on this, but that can, there was probably only about an inch or inch and a quarter of body fill in that can when I started, and there's still some left on the bottom. So really, really, really not a lot of fill on this. It's really thin. In most cases, it's just imperfections in the metal. I don't think it's, I think the thickest spot might be a 1/16 of an inch, maybe less, which is kind of what you want to do. The less you put on, the better. Try and get your metalwork as close as you can to it. So right now, and the other complication, I realize that my organic mass there is getting a little old. The cartridges are, I probably used them 6 months ago or so when I painted the chassis. So ordered a brand new set of cartridges, filters, and a mask and that. So they should be in tomorrow. So if all goes well, we'll give everything another wipe down, and fingers crossed we're hitting this with primer tomorrow. Well, I decided to put one coat of epoxy primer on it, and I had enough to barely cover it all, but I did notice that after the one coat was on the areas where there was body fill, it kind of sucked it in quite a bit. So actually I decided to mix up a second coat and give her a nice good second coat. The the metal that was covered with epoxy primer was fine, but because I had actually scuffed some areas down and put body fill on it, I kind of felt a little more comfortable, I guess, if I put an extra coat of epoxy primer on it. So right now it's setting up right now, but it's getting late tonight. So what I'll do is I'll let this dry a little bit, leave the fans on in here, keep the heat on in the garage, and then basically shut it down. I've got 4 days to top coat the epoxy primer, so there's lots of open time onto it. So tomorrow night I'll come back out here and I will put the high build primer on it. Well, that's it for another week of Coldstream Rod Shop. Not our normal week, really. Just kind of spent a lot of time working on the Camera Lady's body there. Like I said, I don't like showing you me sanding stuff, but I'll show you before, after, what we've got there. So far, at least we've got it back in primer again. All the body fill and like feathering and stuff is all done. Next up on that, like I just said, we'll put the high build body fill on top of it, do the final sand onto it. Hopefully I won't find anything, but you know how it is. Sometimes you do. You fix a little scratch or something. It shouldn't be anything serious. And then we got the 276 DeSoto Hemi block and transmission at least positioned in the 33 chassis. And we did a couple other things on the Camber Ladies 32 Roadster chassis too. So, I mean, it was a busy week, but it's a little bit of a short video, so sorry about that. Next week we'll just keep plugging on all that stuff and really want to get that into paint. I've got a target, won't say what it is because I'll jinx myself, but it's soon to try and get it into paint. And move on with the other stuff. But anyways, come on back next week, see what we're up to on the 32 and 33 Fords. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe. Send me your comments, and everybody have a great week. Take care.